This is Linux in Laws, a podcast on free Libre open source software, broadcasting from the United Kingdom and Germany.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 63 of something called Linux in Laws. Martin, how are things tonight, given this beautiful, balmy winter day in the southwest of England?
I don't know. I've never been to this.
You're not southwest England, I get it.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's pretty windy over here. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we are recording this on the 2nd of February, 2027, I think. No, I'm joking. No, it's still winter, but we're still recording this somewhere between 25 and 26. But this is not a show about days, but rather about a very well-known software initially known as XBMC, now known as Kodi. And we do have all the libraries on the podcast, so without further ado, let's get this rolling by a short intro round. Why don't you start, Keith?
Sure. I'm Keith Harrington. I am the president and executive director of the Kodi Foundation, and I've been a team member since 2011 and been on the board since 2016 and been a user since, 2002 when it first came out on Xbox.
Philip, over to you.
So I'm Philip. My handle is Yol, like YOL. I joined Kodi as a Google Summer of Code student, actually, in 2017-ish. I implemented the Wayland video system support back then and got an invitation to join the Kodi team, which I happily accepted. And then I just went from there and did various things, coding. I joined the Kodi board and did some stuff there together with Keith and was a board member until very recently, actually, last month. And I've also taken over infrastructure maintenance, these sort of things.
Sasha, over to you.
Yes, I'm Sasha. Sarbus is my handle. I started coding for Kodi or XBMC back then for around 15 years ago or so. Joined the team, I think, 8 or 9 years ago. And I'm now a core developer for most of the rendering system, OpenGL, GLAS, and our user interface.
And before we lose the rest of the audience, we should probably explain what Kodi is and what it stands for. So let's rewind back about 70 years. It's the 50s. Mainframes were just on the horizon. That's forward another 50 years. Microsoft, I think, had devised a gadget called the Xbox, if I'm not completely mistaken. And the Xbox was in the business of providing entertainment for the masses in terms of video games. But some bright sparks decided that couldn't be the end of it and decided to put a home theater PC system, as it's now known, on that box. And the rest is history, but before I even get it more wrong, why don't the experts take over? As a short rundown, and let's try to keep this to about 4 hours, of the history of the project.
4 hours might not be enough for the entire history, but I'll try to speed it up. So as you said, 2001, if I recall, the original Xbox came out, and by early 2002, people were hacking on it and figured out how to essentially what we call jailbreaking now, or run unsigned code on it. And some enterprising folks, actually one of them named Frodo, in fact, put together a piece of software called Xbox Media Player and then combined it with another project called Yet Another Media Player and formed XBMC in late 2002. And that was the initial release. They GPL'd it quickly after, and it's been open source effectively ever since. At the beginning, you did need access to the Xbox development kit to build it on the original Xbox, but that's where the project started. We were, I'm pretty sure, the first really network device that you could watch media on remotely. This is before you even had, DVD players that would play things like DivX and things like that back in the day. So this was the OG media player device. It had an Ethernet port on it, which was huge in its time. So you could plug in, your network cable into there. And then with XBMC software, you could use network mounts, you could use things like that, and you could watch media from a server or across your local network. That was really the original design and intent, is to play back media in general, music. Our original player was called DVD player because, we were focused on DVD. We've since renamed it to video player, of course. But that's kind of like the initial history. And it was that way until 2006, if I recall, when that code got ported from, which was a Windows base using DirectX, over to OpenGL. So it could run in Linux and then eventually Mac OS as well. And then that OpenGL code got ported back to DirectX to run on Windows again. And that's really where the multi-platform stuff came in. That really came in around, I want to say 2008. And that's when the essentially core of what XBMC is today, kind of the same essence and the same core architecture, is still present in the project today. We have, things like the menuing system, our scripting language, how you do skins, all of that was really all developed on the Xbox. So a lot of our limitations that exist in the project still exist around that time, but it's really impressive how far both they were able to take it on the Xbox initially, and then how far the team has taken it since then, and how much you can do with Kodi and what was formerly XBMC. So I could go into detail more. I don't know how much more you want me to.
Before we dive into the architecture, let's talk about adoption a little bit to set the scene. If I go into any hotel, and I probably would be the best example, if I turn on to the TV, essentially there's a set-top box behind the TV running Kodi, although it's branded, but the adoption, I reckon, is very short of something called world domination.
I don't know if I would go that far. I spend a lot of time in hotel rooms, and I've only ever seen one device, and that was in Singapore, that was actually running Kodi ever in a hotel. But I've definitely heard of them, and we've talked to, people who build systems for that. There's yachts that actually run Kodi as well, and things of that nature. But yeah, we are prominent. We were more prominent, I think, before Android took over. Now with Android, it's a lot easier to build a set-top box, and so there's less people using Kodi as a base. But definitely before Android was prominent, we were, we're huge in the places like Raspberry Pi and things like that, unsurprisingly. And so in that space, in the embedded Linux space, Kodi's pretty prominent. But I want to say for commercial purposes and places like that, we're less known. But if you know of a hotel that uses us, I'm always interested.
It's called the Hyatt, and I can't reveal any details, but I watched a set-top box booting without interfering too much, let's put it this way. And it wasn't a systemd, it was some sort of, I think it was even OpenRC as an init system typically used in the embedded space. But it would boot a Linux kernel, and after that it would start Kodi, and after that it would have a branded version of Kodi, and you would have to dug deep in terms of going into the licenses in order to capture that you're actually watching a stream that is handled by Kodi in the background, in terms of you're looking at an embedded system that is branded as a set-top box, but in the background, it's just a Linux kernel running a branded version of Kodi.
Yeah, there's definitely a bunch of. WeTech was a sponsor of us for a while, and they were in the hospitality space a ton. WeTech sold Linux boxes, and now they sell, I think, Android set-top still. I'm not sure. AppVisions was a huge sponsor of ours in the early days, and AppVision, I just went to their website. It's at-visions.com, and they are selling hotel TV stuff. I don't know how much they still use Kodi. Definitely our DevCons in 2009 and 2010 was sponsored by them. And so back then they were using them pretty big. And we have a couple team members who were employees of AppVisions at one time. And so this was definitely, as I said, a thing that was more popular before Android became so cheap and apparent. But yeah, and I mean, there's probably still, tens of thousands of devices out there, so that are in the hospitality space.
Going back to the architecture topic, if I take a look at Kodi, it's fair to say that it runs on every operating system or every environment under the sun, ranging from small embedded devices, and set-top boxes probably are the best example for those, or even smartphones running Android, right up to, I'm almost tempted to say, if you're so inclined, you also can compile it on your Z series as an what's called these days, X39 mainframe system. As long as it runs Wayland or X, you're good to go. If I take a look at the code base, and the code base has been maturing for the last, well, as you said, almost 25 years, I see a lot of very intelligent cross-platform code, especially the architecture when it comes down to encapsulating platform details, are probably a good template for any other open source project to go by, aiming at similar, let's put it this way, ecosystems. But maybe you can give a quick overview of the architecture and how you achieve this, and also maybe diving into why C++ was the technology of choice when you first started to implement this. Or started to implement this. Let's put it this way.
Oh man, that's. I think I can talk about the origins a little bit, and some others can also help touch on the architecture stuff. But I can try myself. I think C++ was kind of out of necessity as well. That's what the native development kit for Xbox ran on, and the original Xbox ran a version of Windows 2000. And so really most of the code back then was C++ when you had to get to the low level. I don't think it was just what things were coded on the Xbox. You could probably run other languages, but that was the one that allowed us to get to low level hardware the most. And luckily for us, that continued to be a trend that worked fairly well once it was ported over to other platforms, since C++ runs everywhere. But originally it was pretty much started by kids. The guy who wrote our DVD player that we used for almost 10 years as the video pipeline was 13 years old when he did that architecture. Spiff, who's still a team member today and helps a ton, was an original developer from the original Xbox days. I think started in 02 or 03, and he was a young teenager then as well. So this was not a project that was originally designed by industry experts to be forward compatible and to really be future thinking. It was people really building something out of necessity. They really wanted the ability to watch their media from their TV and not have to hook up a computer to it. And the Xbox kind of fit that, right? We saw a lot of emulators also ported to Xbox back then too, because of the ease of access. And it was really just having a device. This was one of the first, I think they kind of took notes from the TiVo, which was the first Linux embedded device that was commercially available. And they kind of wanted to build a sort of open source thing similar to that. And so architecturally it's evolved a ton, but I want to say its origins are pretty, simple, and were just kind of out of necessity, and they were doing what they knew how and what they could. So it's super impressive just how far it has evolved and came from. I want to pass it over to Yol or Sarbs to talk more about architecture, because they're the developers on this call more than I am.
Yeah, maybe I would take the cross-platform topic for now.
Great.
So I think the architecture is the result of lots of iteration over the years. So clearly, as Keith explained, when it was implemented for the original Xbox, none of what this would become in the future was visible or even in the minds of the people who implemented this. Even now, we still have remnants of these old days, and you can really see that it is the same code base, even if it has evolved every now and then when you are doing some refactoring, some weird quirk will show up that you have no idea how to explain. And if you go into the history, you will notice that, this is exactly how it is because the original Xbox had this quirk and required this code. So it definitely evolved from there. And it's not like someone designed an architecture that would fit the amount of platforms that we have today. It was out of necessity that every iteration, every edition of a new platform, of a new windowing system, of a new rendering system, you had to restructure the code so that the old systems would still work and you could use the new ones in addition. And also during this process, some bad decisions were made. But then later people reviewed it and expanded upon this work and said, okay, now we got it working somehow, but we still need to make this into something that we can continue to maintain, and refactored it further and arrived at the design that we have now, where really the platform specific parts are pretty well separated. And we have also a CI infrastructure that is building for every major platform that we support, which is also a big investment in terms of time and maintenance that you need to have. So I think our Jenkins is building for Windows, like desktop Windows, for UWP, the Universal Windows Platform, which is the current Xbox, for Android, for iOS, for OS X, for Linux, and you need to make sure that every code change still compiles on all of these operating systems. And this is what we do today. So there is no architecture documentation or something to that end that would explain what the big idea behind this is, like you would have in a professional software development. It's all in the heads mostly of the people that implemented it and the team as a larger whole. So we have pretty close collaboration, I would say. You can always ask around on our Slack, which we use for the internal communication, and someone will hop on and try to explain things that you can't just fathom from the code.
Yes, that's good to know, but I wouldn't be so modest, because if I take a look at Omega, which is the recent stable release, and also the releases before, I mean, you just have to take a look at the source code, because essentially, for example, and I don't know when it was refactored that way, but the source code encapsulate, for example, the platform dependencies work pretty well. Just taking power management as an example, the source code essentially tries to suss, or the program tries to suss on what platform it's running on, and then decides on the most promising, let's put it this way, power management approach. And it does, and if you take a look at for example, at the object hierarchy, it's getting a little bit technical now, but I'm just trying to get the point across, because the source code is pretty much self-documenting. You just have to take a look at the source code, because then you know what's going on. And I think you introduced interfaces some time ago in the source code, but even before that, it was pretty clear how the whole thing would kind of work just by looking at the source code.
I think that is probably the result of a very rigorous review process that we have. Some would also call it infamous. I wouldn't go that far. But we have, I would say this way, the people that are really now working on the core C++ code. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff to work on in Kodi. It doesn't all have to be C++. For example, our add-on system is Python, and there's lots of people working just on Python, never touching C++. But if you work on C++, then you are really working with people and getting your code reviewed by people that care a lot about the details, that care a lot about code style, about expressiveness, about maintainability, and so on. And the amazing thing really is that some of those people are, like me, for example, software developers by trade, and others actually came to coding initially through Kodi, and in the process of that, got lots of input from fellow Kodi developers, and this has led them to take jobs in the software development industry. and then teach the next generation. And that's what I really like about working on Kodi.
Okay. Interesting. You just touched on a very important topic here, the plugin system. Before we go into the technical details, this plugin system wasn't always Python. I think about 5 to 6 years ago, you changed to Python from, I can't even remember what it was prior to that. It wasn't Lisp, but some other more esoteric language, right?
I don't think so. It was Python 2, and then it was Python 3. Maybe you're talking about that.
Yeah. So
it's also in Python, okay?
I started out writing Python add-ons for Kodi, and I more or less learned how to code doing that.
Yeah, it has been Python for ages. I mean, maybe Keith, you know when Python was introduced. I certainly don't.
It's only been Python. It was Python actually on the original Xbox.
Oh, it was? Okay. Wow. Interesting. Maybe I'm just confusing things here, but full disclosure, every now and then I teach a seminar at a local university here in Germany, and one of the assignments that students have to do is actually to write a plugin in Python. We had everything under the sun there, ranging from do not use IMDb as the source for metadata for movies, and we're going to go into the details in a minute, but rather use Wikipedia. And the plugins were beautifully designed, coded, but what the feedback that I got basically from the students was how easy it was to implement these plugins.
That's great to hear. Thanks.
Yeah.
But this has also carried Kodi a lot. I think in the past, the plugin system is a major point that makes Kodi what it is and as successful as it is and was.
And on the topic of scrapers, we had an XML-based scraping system for metadata posters and whatnot. So, I think this was what you meant with we had another system available. But it got replaced by Python.
So what exactly?
I think 15 years ago or so.
Okay, fair enough. So what exactly is a plugin in the Python context? Because I think it can be anything, pulling down the weather, ranging from pulling down the weather right up to reverse gravity or something like that, if you're so inclined.
So we do have a bunch of you can expose a bunch of content in Kodi, most likely video, but also audio content, pictures to some extent, and this is the content you want to make available as a plugin. We also have something called scripts, which allow you to extend the UI, but I wouldn't recommend that really. On the other hand, we have C++ plugins for PVR, for visualizations and stuff like that. So we do have C++ add-ons or plugins too.
Plus, Kodi is fully skinnable, right? Because you have different skins, themes, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, we do have a totally custom UI engine, and the arrangement of the elements is done in XML.
Going back to the previous topic of adoption, there are certainly quite a few spins like LibreElec, OpenElec, and so forth of Kodi, taking the code base of Kodi and just turning them into distributions. So I reckon the community is just raving about the code base because otherwise there wouldn't be these distros or Kodi inclined distros, let's put it this way.
Yeah. So there is a bunch of distributions, definitely, and most of them we are in close partnership with LibreElec, and what was kind of the where the derivative of OpenElec, once OpenElec died, LibreElec kind of came out from its ashes. Two of the main developers and many others are all part of the Kodi team directly, and so they definitely contribute to building that distribution. And I think really to build something that works as good as LibreElec does, it kind of needs to be hand in hand with us. And so that's been super useful, not only on the Linux side for testing and just to, have a core critical set of users who are super interested in functionality, but also, just to make something that's the set-top-like experience on platforms such as Raspberry Pi. So there is distributions out there. It's great to have. Our goal is really collaboration as much as possible, and the newest fork, I guess I should say, that's still actually using the XBMC name that just got re-released is actually XBMC for Xbox. So some guys have been backporting our last release to Xbox again. So the original Xbox actually runs a new-ish, I think it's 2 years old now, but a newish version of Kodi, which hasn't really been well supported in almost 10 years. So that's pretty neat that somebody was able to do that.
Very good, very good. We talked about plugins a bit, and there is, of course, the whole ecosystem around Kodi, right? How much of that is, I guess, part of the official project, and how much is done outside of that? Because I imagine that a lot of people want to create plugins. Do you curate them or adopt them in your project through some kind of process, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we have our own repo. So first, the plugin ecosystem is vast, as you alluded to. There's tons and tons of plugins out there that exist. Unfortunately, a lot of them don't work anymore, but by and large, we try to keep compatibility as much as possible. We do develop our own. We've adopted some. Maybe I would guess, if I had to wager a guess, less than 10%. Way less than that are in our official repo is by our own team. Most of the ones in our official repo are third-party community contributors. So we have our own repo. Our repo requires every add-on or plugin to be open source. You can access our repo from our website, Kodi.tv, and you can see what different plugins we have. As long as you're open source and you aren't doing any crazy circumvention, and whatever site that you're writing a plugin or scraper for has the rights to the media that you are showing, we allow that into our repo. We do occasionally, get taken down, and people ask us to remove it. But by and large, these are community developed add-ons and plugins that are for the community at large. So we have hundreds in our own repo that is curated. I wouldn't say curated by us, because we don't really curate them. We don't really have we have featured add-ons on the list, but it's really just, it's pretty basic ones. We try not to highlight media in general, and we try not to recommend or curate your experience for you. It's really just add-ons that fit, that we feel are quote unquote safe and available to use there. Of course, there's a lot of you can install other repos, which we don't recommend, but you can use third-party repos. And then there's a ton of other add-ons you can get outside of our own repository of them.
What sort of things should we be thinking of with those other repos that people add to it? I imagine that you have all the popular stuff in your own repo, right? So it's what do people need that isn't in your repo, I guess?
A use case of having a repository, an external repository, would be to actually test code. So if I want to share parts of my or a new plugin with a set of the community to test it out, I can do it in my own repository and get feedback there. So I don't commit code to production, let's say.
Okay, makes sense.
The other thing that's hugely popular is other streaming services, right? We don't have a whole lot of the streaming services such as Disney or ESPN or Paramount Plus or any of those in our own repository. You can imagine why. But people have written third-party add-ons for these. These exist as long as you have an account. You can sign in and you can actually stream pretty much every streaming platform in existence inside of Kodi, completely open source, completely free.
That nicely brings us back to the streaming. It's probably fair to say controversy, because if you take a look at the Kodi website, I can't really miss the banner about this disclaimer about streaming. Maybe you can shed more light on this and why this is so important to put it first thing on the website.
Sure. So I think you're referring to when you click on the downloading Kodi page, there's an official notice that says,
yes, exactly.
The official Kodi version does not contain any content whatsoever. So one problem that we've ran into is, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad actors in the world who want to prepackage us with things that we have no association with, such as third-party add-ons that you can watch everything under the sun in and things of that nature. And they don't reskin it. And so it says Kodi very blatantly on it, and they resell these. And then when this set-top style box does not work, right? Typically, the most common thing is people take Fire Sticks from Amazon, and they will load a bunch of software up, hack something together, and preload a whole bunch of add-ons, and then sell these things, and then they stop working. They see the Kodi logo on it, so they come to us, and they're like, hey, my content isn't working. Why isn't it working? And they think we have some association with that. So we don't ship any content. We don't ship any add-ons that have any content. All of that is user installed. We do have some scrapers, meaning that if you have content on your system and you some local content, let's say you DVR'd, for example, or you recorded off of your TV signal or something of that nature, and you can essentially set that directory as a media library for TV or movies, and we will add metadata to it, such as album art, actor names, things of that nature. And we ship scrapers, and that's the difference between a scraper and a plugin. So a scraper allows you to basically match the file names with something that exists on the internet, whether it be music, whether it be TV, whether it be movies. We do ship those, but we don't ship any actual content. No content comes with Kodi. And I think this is an important distinction to make. Just like VLC, when you download VLC, there's no content inside of VLC. We're similar in the same way.
That nicely actually leads us to licensing, because if we take a look at the GitHub repo, Kodi is licensed under GPL version 2. That means anybody who wants to touch the code base has to release their modifications too. And needless to say, if I'm on the dark side, and if I do a plugin, and correct me if I'm wrong, theoretically, I'm supposed to release the source code of this plugin as well, never mind what it does and what services it's talking to and what it does internally.
So that's not entirely correct. So you basically have to, because Python in general, and I mean, you can obfuscate it and compile it in some ways. With a Python plugin or script, you can essentially try to figure out ways to hide that code in some way. Kodi in general doesn't make it easy. We don't try. We have never put in any effort to allow closed source add-ons. With a native plugin, you could technically release one without source code. That is a little trickier. We think that might be a GPL violation. I'm unaware of people who have done that, released one, but to your point, skinning and things like that do not require it, because it's not actually source code modification. What we do have is a trademark policy. So if you want to use the Kodi trademark, you cannot ship a copy of Kodi that's modified in any way, meaning you can't pre-install any add-ons or plugins, you can't change the skin, you can't do any of that. Now, if you want to rebrand, two famous rebrands, the most common today is OSMC. OSMC is a rebrand. They use their own logo, they ship their own add-ons, things of that nature. Another big popular one was Boxy. Boxy was originally XBMC, and that was also a rebrand. And this is also where Plex came from. So Plex initially was a fork of XBMC. That's where they started, and they also did a rebrand. So those predate our trademark policy, but those would be in essentially if they still existed today, and OSMC fits because they're not using the Kodi brand. They are welcome to pre-install what they want. We just really want to reduce confusion and don't want those users to come to our platform. And by and large, with OSMC as a great example, we don't have that problem. Now with LibreElec uses our branding, and we've gave them permission to ship, I think they ship 1 or 2 Python add-ons inside of their distribution, and we've given them permission to do that. So that's really where the trademark policy says, if you do want an exception, please come to us first.
Yeah, they just have an add-on for system configuration of the box, because contrary to Kodi, LibreElec is a whole closed system where you can also configure network interfaces and the like. And for this, it totally makes sense to have a plugin. They do not ship any content, which we would not allow. Just as a note here, in this regard, we are similar to other major open source projects like Mozilla Firefox, where the code is fully open source, but if you modify it, you cannot call it Firefox anymore.
No, understood. And thanks for the clarification, Phil. Going back to the GPL thing, yes, I reckon there are quite a few bad actors out there, because where there's an opportunity, probably there are people probably are game to make money without caring about GPL. I'm just wondering, if you have never come across a GPL violation, how are you monitoring this?
We've came across many, unfortunately.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, so unfortunately now you can't sell a device with the word Kodi in Amazon, for example, right? So one of our sponsors, Flirk, I'll shout them out because they're a great company and they release great hardware. That's FLIRC, and they have an IR transmitter, but that's USB, and they also have a Raspberry Pi case that's Kodi branded. So please, if you want to support us, buy that case, because we get some royalty money off of that. They can't sell it's very difficult for them to change their products because Amazon will deny them immediately. And then they'll actually come to us on the foundation to make sure that we allow that device to use the name Kodi. We got to this point because there was so many people selling quote unquote Kodi boxes, meaning that those preloaded Fire Sticks or things of that that were using our brand name, that we kind of took the nuclear approach, unfortunately, which is nothing on Amazon can use the word Kodi anymore. Same with eBay has the same. We spent countless hundreds of hours kind of tracking these down and working with both legal departments to kind of eliminate that. It's really hard to eliminate the source, but we found out one of the most prominent box manufacturers in China that make essentially the hardware was actually preloading some of this stuff to make it easier for people. And once we explained to them the situation, they apologized. They claimed to not know, and they've removed that since then.
In China? Okay, I'm impressed.
Well, luckily they had a U.S. office that I actually went down and met with those guys.
I see. Okay, fair enough.
Yep, because I live in the Bay Area, so I was able to actually meet with them in person. There was a pretty big box seller in Florida who I also made a huge deal to them too, who wanted to be a sponsor. And then after doing some research, I saw what they were doing, and candidly, I kind of shamed them and said, there's no way you could ever be a sponsor. Like, you've clearly profited off of us. This is ridiculous. And the next day, we got a sizable donation in our PayPal account.
Okay.
And so that was nice of them. That's not my goal. I never want to legitimize any of that. But it was nice that they did finally. But for every 1 or 2 people who try to do the right thing, there's definitely hundreds of others at one time who haven't. Luckily, getting back to, Android really being prominent, the rise of Android as a platform has kind of and the fact that they can't use the Kodi brand anymore has switched people to using other things who are bad actors in this space. And so we've definitely seen less of this in the last few years than we did, let's say 10 years ago, 7 years ago. So that's great. And hopefully that trend continues. Of course, we haven't mentioned this, but we're a completely volunteer organization. So not a single person in Kodi. Nobody works on Kodi for profit. Now, a few people have gotten contract jobs in the past where, a hardware manufacturer, a vendor has said, hey, I would like this thing, this piece of hardware to be supported. Can we fund someone? And so we've helped connect them to a developer who could work on that, but that's outside of us. We don't have a professional services. We don't have a consulting arm. VLC has a thing called Video Labs. We don't have any equivalency of that. So everyone who works on the project, by and large, 99% of our code has been done completely as a volunteer project for fun because they care about it. And so we're trying to, and so it's, it is disappointing when people kind of, take advantage of that. And so I and others have spent a ton of work trying to, quell that noise and stop that. And by and large, I think we've been pretty successful in calming that whole entire black market, for lack of a better term, down. And so it's a lot less prominent than it ever was, at least based on our forum posts. We don't get that many forum posts. We don't get that many users like we did in 10 years ago or whatever.
Interesting. Touching on the volunteering aspect here. Now it's the time for the long-awaited commercial break. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about the Kodi Foundation before we wrap this up?
Sure. Happy to. So Kodi Foundation is a nonprofit organization, 501c3, registered in the United States. It started when Boxy, so in 2009, a couple team members of XBMC wanted to start and form a company called Boxy. And because of some things that happened with Plex that I don't need to get into, basically, Plex was a fork that wasn't really contributing code back at that time. Since then, they've done great stuff. This was very, very early on. But Boxy said, hey, we're going to try to do things right in the community. So we're going to donate you a bunch of money. And specifically, we're going to do that so you can start a nonprofit organization, a foundation. Similar, it was modeled after the Apache Foundation and then later the Mozilla Foundation, to essentially protect the code, but also protect the trademark. And we're going to help you trademark it. And so they gave us the money initially to hire the lawyers and do all that. And they actually, our first DevCon was 2009, and it was sponsored by Boxy as well. And so Boxy was a great asset to us initially on when they were VC backed. And so the purpose of the foundation is really to be stewards of the administrative stuff. And so none of the team members have to worry about that. So I joke that I do all the stuff that nobody else wants to do. Really, it's not that much these days, right? It's the biggest thing I think that the foundation does is they manage the donation money. So we've adopted a transparency model, meaning that anybody who's an official team member, you have full access to our Slack, but you also have full access to our GitHub. And we have a board called Board on our GitHub, a GitHub project that basically has everything that we go over as a board member. It's full transparent. Any team member can read our notes, can read any of the issues, but can also open issues that they have with the board. We meet monthly. We kind of record those. We take notes, and then we publish the recording and we publish the notes for any team member to listen to. And it's really so we have transparency on where our donation money, and everyone feels that they know what's happening inside of the organization. We don't do that much. We also handle all the legal, anything legal related, right? About once a year, we get a DMCA notice, and we sometimes take that media down. We sometimes don't. It just depends what if the DMC notice, honestly, if a media company comes to us and says, hey, we don't want an add-on to exist inside of your add-on repository, we'll remove it.
Sorry, Keith, for these two people who do not know what DMC is, why don't you explain that?
Yes, please. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Digital Millennium Copyright Act is a U.S. law that basically says, if you're using someone's logos, if you're using someone's likeness or their name, they can essentially do a request to get it removed. And so, for example, let's say I have an add-on called Linux In-Laws that has all of your shows, and you have a trademark or a copyright on the words Linux In-Laws, and you decide that you don't want Kodi to have access to it, you can send us a DMCA request and we can remove it. You can also just ask us, right? I think a lot of people get confused and think that we have some big corporate backing, and of course we don't. So you email legal@Kodi.tv and it's an alias to board@Kodi.tv.
We probably wouldn't do this, but we will send the Russians. I'm joking.
Well, good luck. I'm in the U.S., so they might have some difficulties getting here, but
they may already be your neighbors. I'm joking. No, jokes aside, please to continue, Keith.
Yeah, so just in general, we try to work with anybody who wants to work with us as much as possible in the open source ethos, and we try to make sure that our team. So the purpose of the foundation is really to steward the money and to make sure that bylaws and make sure the trademark policy is adhered to. So in the case of that, we get a GPL violation, we'll ask our lawyers who are pro bono to basically reach out to them. We'll ask our lawyers to send us a draft. Typically these days, we'll just write something up in ourselves and then send it to them, and then they'll tweak it a little bit, and then we'll try to convince the people to stop GPL violating, right, or release the source code. And those are the type of things the foundation really handles. I do want to say one thing. One of the reasons why our name was changed is actually Boxy paid to try to get the XBMC name trademarked. And unfortunately, that did not succeed. And there was a company that had a similar name. No, it is not Microsoft. Microsoft has always been a great partner of ours. We've never had any issues from the Microsoft side. Said, hey, your name is too similar. You can't use that trademark. And unfortunately, because they asserted their trademark, they also required us to change our name. So while we did not choose it, we were kind of growing out of XBMC anyways, as we were on multiple platforms. So it was kind of a good time to change that. Do I miss the XBMC name? Sure. I think it'll always have a place in my heart, but I do. I am glad that we're no longer directly attached to Xbox. So yeah. Besides that tangent, that's kind of what the foundation does. It's really just filing paperwork and just making sure that legally there's no problems. I had a small issue for anyone who follows us on Twitter. We had a small issue with Stripe a few weeks ago that Stripe tried to basically deactivate our account, and I was able to solve it after going to Twitter as an example, right? And so I think us having the foundation and also us having a strong following, on X, has definitely helped when situations like that has came up. So yeah, that's pretty much what the foundation does.
And just as a note here, to be clear, we only get money from donations by people that want to give us money. We do not get any advertising money as of now.
Correct.
Excellent. That sounds like a well-run community. So as a final kind of looking forward, I can see you've got a new release coming, which has a bunch of interesting features and things that people may want to be interested in. Would you like to shed some light on the Piers release coming up?
Yeah, I can start. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is really better WebOS support. So WebOS is LG's own open source, and I say this with air quotes, operating system for their TVs. And the amazing guys over at OpenWebOS have basically built their own native development kit entirely, and they actually got all of Kodi running on the WebOS TV natively. So all 8 million plus lines of code works, and they even have gotten media playback, DRM'd media playback, so you can actually watch, DRM media on platforms such as Disney Plus with those add-ons that I mentioned before, or even Netflix inside of the WebOS TV, fully in open source if you want to, right? So I think getting that support, getting HDR working and stuff like that on the WebOS platform has been super impressive watching those guys. And a couple of them are team members. I'll call out Sunderman and Craig in particular have worked on that tremendously. And I'm super excited to just watch the maturity of yet another platform that we can support. I do want to say we can't support Tizen because Tizen doesn't have a native development kit or anything like that. And so for everyone who's like, hey, where's Tizen? Where's PS5 support? This is where it's at. So somebody has to build those native development kits before you can even think about getting Kodi on there.
Probably now is the time to wrap this up. Any final call to actions before we go to the boxes and finish the episode?
Yeah, come help us maintain our servers. We are in really dire need of server administrators.
And developers.
Yeah, of course. You can never have too many developers.
Exactly. Details in the GitHub, in the shape of the GitHub repo, of course, within the show notes. And now is probably time for the boxes. Let's start with Sasha. Sasha, what's your box?
Well, if you're thinking about contributing to Kodi or you want to contribute to a software project at all, I think Kodi is a very nice place to do so. Lots of friendly people, and I would say we are one of the top, volunteer-driven software project, which has, I don't want to say professional reviews, but it's pretty good. You get really good feedback, and if you're open to that, you can really learn a lot.
Bill, over to you.
So last week for my day job, I went to a training called Soft Skills for Software Architects, and it was actually quite great. So not even for my day job mostly, but for volunteer work. So if you can get your employer to send you to such a training, I highly recommend it.
Okay, Keith, over to you.
Pass.
No POCs. Okay, fair enough. Not even Kodi. I'm joking. Martin, what's your POCs for this week then? Or fortnight, rather.
Yes, we do. Release fortnightly, but yes. Anyway, my POCs is
yes.
We do, in case you've forgotten. And we are in series 2.
We're going to get this out, of course. Anyway, Martin, go ahead.
Of course, yes. So anyway, my POCs is a series called Pennyworth, which is, as those of you familiar with the name, the origins of the Batman's butler.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
It's very good.
How did you come across this, I wonder?
Through my usual streaming services.
I thought the wife recommended that or something like that. I'm not too sure now. What about the kids? No, the kids don't watch it? No, Martin?
It's not that suitable for...
Okay. As not for minors,
groups.
Okay? I see. So if you're listening, what would you recommend with regards to the lower age bracket there? 35?
I don't think there is such an age classification, right?
I thought that Martin is slightly above the age of 35. As a matter of fact, quite a lot. But not to worry about this.
Anyway,
okay.
What's your POC?
My POC is actually proper prompt engineering. And Martin, you'll be very interested to hear this for the following reason. Yes. The other week, I came.
I thought you didn't believe in AI and didn't use it ever, and all
hear me out.
It was not very good, etc., etc.
Yeah, this is getting more interesting by the minute because a guy called Roman Trollop, which you may or may not remember, on LinkedIn, and I came across this a couple of weeks ago. Ask ChatGPT version 5.1 what is the fastest database on the planet. Answer in one word. No, Martin, he didn't. Funny enough, actually, it was Redis. It wasn't Valky. But you see, when I saw this, I decided to take it for a spin. So I asked ChatGPT, Claude, and some other AIs about the fastest database on the planet, and some came up with quite different answers about that.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And one of them, actually, I think it was Claude, answered Postgres.
Excellent.
And of course,
that sounds like the LLM of choice. Yeah.
A clear case of hallucination about that.
No. It did say you did ask for a database, right? So this
Yes, Martin. So I kind of
no, good
rephrased
answer, good
this
answer.
more
I like it.
precisely.
Did you now?
Sequel, in terms of adding more conciseness to the whole thing. And yes, no surprises, the answer was actually Redis. So it's just a matter of how you phrase the question. This would be my kind of pox, as in Find of the Fortnite,
That's
to
more like
use
an
an
Ant-pox,
ancient
yeah.
term. You see, none of the LLMs that I asked came up with the word Valkey. So, Matt, there's probably some room for improvement
Because
there.
they're out of date, aren't they? That's why.
Exactly, yes. And with that, Keith, Phil, and Sasha, thank you for being here. Love to have you back
Thank
in
you very
about
much, guys. Yep.
yes, half a year time, when finally word domination has been achieved by Cody. No jokes aside. Full disclosure, I've been using Cody for the last 17 years, and I'm really impressed. Let's put it this way.
Well, thanks.
Always glad to hear about happy users.
This is the Linux in-laws,
You come for the knowledge.
but stay for the madness.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you like this feature presentation. If so, please spread the word. If not, please let us know. Feedback at linuxinlaws.eu.
And this is 63, if I'm not completely mistaken, as in Martin's age.